Thank you, Senator Grassley. I want to thank you for leading this effort. Your dogged determination in investigating this unbelievably serious issue. I want to thank Senator Cassidy, Senator Cornyn, and our other colleagues that will join us here. I certainly want to thank the witnesses and the whistleblowers. I also want to thank you for your protection of whistleblowers over the years. We need more of them coming forward. I think my primary point is what we're going to be discussing today, examining, revealing, should come as no surprise to anyone. We've known since the start of the Biden administration, I don't know how many times I've said it, that Biden and his Democrat colleagues, their open border policy facilitates the multi-billion-dollar business model of some of the most evil people on the planet. Drug traffickers, human traffickers, sex traffickers. This has been obvious. I became chairman of Homeland Security in 2015, the last 2 years of the Obama administration, all 4 years during the Trump administration. We held something like 36 hearings on the problems associated with illegal immigration. Now, this is what, during the Trump administration, a president who actually wanted to secure the border and stop the flow. 36 hearings. In one of those hearings on June 26, 2019, we heard testimony about a 51-year-old man who was apprehended before they did an identity blood test, DNA test. He confessed that he came across the border posing as a family unit with an infant child that he bought for $84. And that was testimony before the Homeland Security Committee in 2019. Vice President Kamala Harris was on my committee at that point in time. So again, this should come to a surprise to nobody. And of course, Project Veritas in November 29, 2022 released a video with an interview with one of our witnesses, Tara Lee Rodas. A few days after that, I wrote a letter joined by 4 of my colleagues. I just want to read a couple segments for this. This was to HHS Secretary Becerra. We write concerning an alarming report by a federal employee whistleblower that the Department of Health and Human Services is knowingly transferring unaccompanied migrant children in the custody of criminals, including sex traffickers. If these claims are true, we wrote, we certainly know they are true. This is pure evil being committed by your agency. This cannot be swept under the rug. The American public must know the truth about what is happening to these victims of the Biden administration's inhumane open border policy. Now, we wrote that letter December 5th, 2022. Now, you would think, with the revelation of that whistleblower interview by Project Veritas, with a letter from 5 U.S. senators expressing the concern about what is happening to children, unaccompanied minors, being taken into custody by U.S. agency officials, you would think the Secretary of Homeland Health and Human Services would jump on that, investigate this, and clean it up. He didn't even respond to our letter. That's what we're dealing with here. We are talking about total neglect. Fast forward, February 23rd, 2023, the New York Times, of all publication, writes an article about this. And God bless the reporter, Hannah Dreyer, for investigatory work. That's exactly what Senator Grassley was talking about. We need an investigatory press that holds both sides equally accountable. She writes an article, 85,000 children, unaccompanied children, apprehended, given over to HHS, or are released to a sponsor, are unaccounted for. 85,000 children. Again, that's over a year ago. Has the Biden administration, has Secretary Becerra, has Secretary Mayorkas, have they hopped on this? Have they put all hands on deck to dig into this, make sure this doesn't happen, that these children are protected? No, they won't even respond to our oversight letters. That's what we're dealing with here. The American public has to understand this isn't an accident. They want an open border. They caused this problem. They're well aware of the inhumanity, of the depredations being visited on the people that they claim to have a humane open border policy for. So that's what's at stake. Again, I truly appreciate the witnesses, our whistleblowers, Senator Grassley, all the work you've done on this, and I'm looking forward to the testimony. I hope the American people are listening, and even more importantly, I hope Secretary Becerra, Mayorkas, President Biden listen to this and actually start doing something about it before another child is raped or trafficked or murdered or decapitated. Thank you. Thanks, Senator Cassidy. Dr. Sadowski. I'm awful at that.
Sadowski, sir.
Okay, good. In my opening statement, I talked about a hearing I held in 2019 where we had testimony that they sold an infant child, an infant boy, to a 51-year-old man to comprise a family unit to exploit our immigration law for $84. As chairman of the committee, I've been down to Central America. I've heard the depredations of, again, the reason I call them some of the most evil people on the planet, and you heard what ISIS has done, these people do things even worse. I noticed in your testimony you left out one sentence because it's hard to even describe the depredations, right? Mm-hmm. But I think it's important that we do describe it so people understand the evil that is being perpetrated by this open border policy. And the sentence I'm going to read it, unaccompanied minors are especially vulnerable while en route to the border. In a specific case I researched, a trafficker harvested a 12-year-old's eye for $15,000 in Mexico.
That's correct, sir.
My guess, as a criminologist, you've heard a lot worse than that.
Yes, sir. Yes, Senator.
Do you want to share any of those things? Again, I'm not trying to be morbid here, but I think it's extremely important that people realize this isn't just, we're just not inconveniencing these people. This is human depredation.
Right. The former sex traffickers that I've interviewed in prison have described what they call farms. Farms exist both on the U.S. and Mexican side of the border. And it ultimately is where somebody that is either no longer valued to the cartel or is suspected of being an informant or suspected of other violations of the cartel are taken. And those are basically, when we see on the news about X amount of bodies buried or in acid, those are what the Mexican cartels refer to as farms.
Mr. Rodas, you spoke of your knowledge of MS-13. Also, as Chairman of Homeland Security, we held hearings on these gangs. I mean, what they do just for initiation is horrific. I'll read you. This is out of to become a homeboy, a Chico's, an initiate must commit at least one murder of a rival gang member. Once Chicos were voted in by members of a clique, leaders would slowly count to 13 while gang members beat the prospective member. That's just an initiation, right? They got to murder a rival member, and then it goes worse from that. I mean, what they actually do to girls, the mutilation, the rapes, the murders. So you're aware then, in your whistleblowing, what you saw our government agencies. And by the way, this isn't willful ignorance. It's not willful negligence. This is malevolent. To allow children, knowing full well the children have been sold, that people's eyes and organs are being harvested, that boys and girls are going to be raped and mutilated and, in the end, buried in a farm. They released MS-13. Can you describe a little bit in terms of what you know about MS-13?
Well, sadly, as I said, my husband is from El Salvador, and 15 years ago, El Salvador was one of the most violent places on the planet. So we're talking the entire globe, run by gangs like MS-13 and 18th Street Gang, known as transnational criminal organizations. But a DHS whistleblower revealed in 2021 that members on transnational criminal organizations like MS-13 and 18th Street Gang began for the very first time this new and emerging threat of sponsoring children through the UAC program. Understand, in the history of the UAC program, it had never happened before. Never happened. Why is it that we now have these violent gangs? And in the particular case that got me walked off the site, it just so happened this female operator worked in a hotel. How convenient. So understand these are known sex traffickers, labor traffickers, drug traffickers, and have no regard for human life whatsoever. And if anybody saw the recent interview of Tucker and Bukele, Bukele, the president of El Salvador, said that MS-13 is involved in satanic ritual abuse and sacrificing children.
And people within our federal agencies knowingly, willingly, malevolently are allowing children just to get them out the door because they're overwhelmed through this open border policy. They're willingly letting them go into the open arms of MS-13 and maybe even worse gangs.
Yes, Senator, and I wish I could tell you
What is your
different.
current status? I mean, you were retaliated against. Have you been returned to work? Have they made you whole in terms of retaliation? Are you still being retaliated over?
Well, very fortunately, I was a detailee to HHS. So at the time that they put me under investigation and walked me off the site, I think they believed my home agency would fire me. I think maybe they didn't calculate that at the Office of Inspector General, we protect whistleblowers, and especially whistleblowers who report that children are going to gang members on taxpayer dollars. So my agency protected me.
Okay, so in your statement, you also said that for your personal safety is threatened by who? By the gangs? By the agency? Why did you feel threatened? Why did you need escorts?
Well, what's interesting is at the moment, I was just scared that they had done this to me. I thought I was going to lose my job. I didn't think I was in physical danger. They thought I was in physical danger.
But by who, though? By the gangs?
What's interesting is that they feared that the retaliation would be from the agency, not from the gangs.
That's quite telling. In my letter, reacting to your interview by Project Veritas in November 2022, we wrote, it's not only my letter, for the colleagues, the most reprehensible claim by Ms. Rodas occurred when she raised concerns to command center executives. These are HHS agency employees about placing another unaccompanied child in a questionable home. According to Ms. Rodas, someone told her, quote, "I think you need to understand we only get sued if we keep kids in care too long. We don't get sued by traffickers. Are you clear? We don't get sued by traffickers." So my question is this malevolence. Who? How many? Again, I'm not expecting you to name names right now. Have you turned those names over to the Inspector General? Have you reported on the supervisors, these
Yes.
executives who, so these names are known?
Yes, Senator, they are known.
Has any accountability, has there been any discipline enacted or taken out against these individuals?
So to my knowledge, Senator, we're not made aware of ongoing investigations.
Of course not.
I'm sure you've heard that from this
But
side
I mean,
of the
have you
table
seen
before.
anybody? Have you seen anybody walked out?
No, sir.
Their belongs in a cardboard box and shown the door.
No, Senator. I haven't seen anyone suspended or debarred.
Ms. White, what about you?
No, I have not. Not one person has, to my knowledge,
Again, have you provided names of individuals who
Yes.
knowingly just looked the other way,
Yes.
knowing exactly what was happening to these children?
Yes.
You've provided names.
I've provided names. I was not walked off the site because I didn't have a MS-13 case, but I had multiple cases that I reported on. One in particular where we sent 329 children to an address in Houston, Texas, right? Two buildings, two garden apartment buildings.
That's a really generous foster
So,
family, isn't it?
Very kind of them.
Take on
Very kind of
329
them.
kids?
Yeah. So no, to my knowledge, no one has been reprimanded for what they've done. No.
Have you experienced any retaliation?
I have not. They let me leave the site. Gave me a thank you letter, actually acknowledging that I had found trafficking on the site. Thanked me for putting together programs to train the case managers. So they let me leave on good terms. But again, I didn't have an MS-13 case.
So I have to believe that most people working in the agencies are humane, are concerned about the children. I'd like to believe that. But my final question really is, what percentage of management, of people working in these agencies are fully aware of this, understand exactly what's happening? and either are directing detailees or employees to look the other way. I mean, literally directing it. So they're completely responsible and culpable versus just acquiescing and going, I can't be as brave as these two whistleblowers. I'm just going to keep my head down and keep my job. Can you give us some sort of feel for the people who are actually culpable versus what percent know it but aren't willing to come forward?
Well, the HHS staff knows they won't be held accountable. As you can see, you've sent letters to them. They don't even answer them. So they know nothing's going to happen to them, absolutely nothing. However, there are good people that are working on these sites and working at HHS, but they're terrified to come forward. Tara Rodas and I have a certain level of protection because we work at different agencies and we were just detailees for a temporary amount of time. However, the HHS workers, they are terrified. They have seen examples made of people that come forward. So any HHS whistleblower gets fired. They're terminated.
So this is a department that is rotten from the top.
To the core.
And again, the question is, how far down does it go before you just get to the people who just want to keep their heads down and are terrified of, the snakehead at the top? I've got a few questions. Senator Grassley has a couple he wants me to ask. First of all, Ms. Rodas, Ms. White said that one of your supervisors accused you of having cultural bias. Is that true?
So I was very much liked. Thank you for the question, Senator. I was very much liked on the site until I reported the MS-13 case. Once I reported the MS-13 case, the day I was taken off the case, they did accuse me. They said, perhaps you have cultural bias against Salvadoran people, which is why I was calling out MS-13, to which I said, I know we don't know each other well, but my husband is from El Salvador, so I can assure you I'm not biased against Salvadorans.
Maybe you're just a selective racist. So yeah, they played the race card on you.
They did.
By the way, I'm not challenging you, but you said that these kids are turned over to random people. No, they're turned over to a highly organized transnational criminal organization, sex traffickers, human traffickers. This is highly organized, right? So I know what you meant. They're not turned over to good people. They're turned over to the sex and human trafficking business, the multi-billion-dollar business. It's sick. I just want to ask a question in general, because it's literally the $64,000 questions. I think we're asking this all the time. Why are they doing this? Why has this administration, why have Democrats, you'll notice, by the way, even though they're invited, there's not one Democrat senator sitting here listening to your stories, asking questions. That similar letter that I sent to Secretary Becerra after your interview with Project Veritas, I sent that to Senator Peters, chairman of Homeland Security now. We've not held one hearing on the border. We've had Secretary Mayorkas a couple times, and we've been able to talk about the border, but no hearing on the border. Certainly no hearing on this. Senator Sanders, chairman of the Health Committee, no hearing on this. God bless Senator Grassley for doggedly pursuing this and organizing this roundtable. I'll just ask, you don't have to answer this, but do you have an explanation? Why is the Democrat Party, why are Democrats in Congress, this administration, why are they pursuing this wide open border that's a clear and present danger to this nation? 2 million unknown gotaways. The sex trafficking we're talking about here, the human trafficking, the involuntary servitude, they know they're facilitating it. It's not a secret. Do you have any explanation in your own mind? I mean, I'm happy to have you conjecture.
It defies logic.
Pardon?
It defies logic and is inhumane. It really does.
But there has to be a reason, right? Anybody want to just state your assumption?
I could speculate as to many reasons as to why they would allow an open border. However,
I'm allowing you to.
However, I believe that bureaucrats don't want their program shut down. And if they have massive crowds at the border and they're not able to get a hold of it, just like Senator Langford was saying, that's a bad photo op, but that's also a reason to dig in further to actually what's going on and why they're so out of control. So I really think it's just a response. It's damage control.
But you think bureaucrats, the agencies are driving this to protect their jobs? I would disagree, because I think Border Patrol is overwhelmed by this. They're looking for any port in a storm. That they don't like this.
Yeah, I don't want to speculate.
They don't like seeing what they see in the border. These young women raped, the taunting tree, the rape trees, the panty trees. I mean, they don't like seeing that.
Yeah.
They don't like seeing the dead bodies in the Rio Grande. So I'm looking at why is Biden doing this? Why are Democrat senators voting against completing the fence? Implementing policies that can prevent, stop incentivizing people to come to this country. I mean, we're asking them to flood our country.
Yes, and Senator Johnson, like my wonderful colleague Deborah, I don't like to speculate, but what I can say, it surely sounds virtuous to say we're reuniting children with families. That sounds wonderful, but that's not what's happening. So they're playing a little bit of smoke and mirrors. They're saying this thing on one side, we're so humanitarian, look at us, we're reuniting children with their families. But the reality is the horror that you described is that children now are the prey of criminal networks.
So how do they get away with it? The answer is the media. One we haven't really explored. I think, Ms. White, you talked about Cherokee Federal. That's one of the NGOs. Is that the primary one that's been subcontracted to do this work?
That was the prime contractor at the facility that I was at.
At the facility. Do we have others as well?
Yes.
So are they in cahoots with the human traffickers? I mean, are they part and parcel of the same organization funded by the American taxpayer? I mean, is that how bad this is? The American taxpayer literally funding the human trafficking operation?
I'd say follow the money. I mean, if you read the 6th and 7th presentment of the Florida grand jury, it reads like a horror story in terms of the monies going to these NGOs.
Which is your impression. This is exactly question number 2 from Senator Grassley. What are the main findings of the Florida grand jury on unaccompanied children? We'll let you answer that, Ms. Harris, Secretary Harris.
Where do I start? It's everything that the panelists have said. I think some of the most startling things were the fact that the case managers, the staff being discouraged from asking questions, being discouraged from sharing with law enforcement any concerns. And then again, I think the 6th and 7th really shed light. The grand jury had witness testimony from executives in these NGOs sharing with them the horrors. And some of them committed to asking more questions, making changes. And 6 months later, they were invited back and 0 changes happened. 0. And they basically said, as long as the money is there, we're going to do whatever ORR says.
So the NGOs in the grand jury basically punted to the agency heads, and the agency heads, again, are more interested in speed than safety.
Absolutely.
But it gets you right back to, but they wouldn't have to worry about speed if we actually tried to secure the border and we stopped incentivizing this massive flow of illegal immigrants. Senator Grassley's first question was, Secretary Harris, you conducted state inspections of unaccompanied children contract facilities operating in your state. As you're aware, HHS's Office of Refugee Resettlement oversight of those contractors is so bad that Florida impaneled a grand jury to investigate. Okay, so that's kind of setting up his other question there. Again, I think the main question we all have, and you heard Senator Grassley ask you the same thing, Ms. White, who and how many are ultimately responsible for this? How many people are putting the case officers in a state of fear, basically threatening their job if they actually do their job? Who are these people? Where are they located? Is it strictly in the agencies, and the NGOs they're just following the money and they're just they're using the cover of the agencies and these executives in the agencies? Well, we're just doing what they told us to do. We're innocent. We're following orders. It's the federal government directing us. We're following orders. We're just doing, okay. I'm suspicious of that. I'd be interested to see whether they're going to do more investigations of these NGOs. We actually have evidence now of NGO providing a piece of paper to migrants before they get here. And one of the things in there is say, when you get to the U.S., vote for Joe Biden. Which, by the way, I think that's the answer to the $64,000 question. okay? I'll speculate. Let me just give each one of you again, thank you for your appearance here. Thank you for whistleblowing. Please encourage more people in the federal government to come forward. We can't just have a couple with courage. There's a lot of power in numbers, okay? Even greater credibility. But listen, you folks are completely credible. I don't think anybody is denying or questioning your testimony. But I'll give each one of you, and we'll start with Dr. Sadulski. Did I get it right?
You did, sir.
Pretty darn close. But we'll start there, and we'll go from my right to your left. Just have a final comment here before I close this roundtable out.
I really appreciate this opportunity. It is people like you, it is people like those that have been here today that care and that are making a difference. And it's difficult to answer your question as to the why. I think we can speculate, and I think what we think is true in terms of following the money, but it comes down to corruption. And it comes down to corruption. From what I've seen in talking to cartel members, they've explained to me that people that wouldn't even be involved in trafficking people right now are trafficking people because it's so easy to get them into the United States. So I just want to say thank you for this opportunity, and I really appreciate it.
So again, you would agree with me basically that the only reason this is happening is because we're facilitating it with this open border policy. If we had secured border, you wouldn't have the opportunity. Listen, there's still depredations occurring. People are human trafficked, sex trafficked, but it wouldn't be happening at American taxpayer expense. It wouldn't be happening on our soil to the extent that it is. I mean, is that basically true?
From what the cartel members that are incarcerated that have explained to me is that it's viewed as an open border, and it has increased the people that are ultimately getting involved in this. It's difficult to say about the border being completely open. When I'm at the border, I see Border Patrol everywhere. The problem is migrants are able to come in and claim asylum, and they know that. So aside from the ORR children issue, one of our problems is that everyone knows, unless they're coming from Mexico and have a special exemption, that they can come to the United States, claim asylum. They're often given a court date, 4 to 7 years in the future, and released. And that has become common knowledge in Latin America, and that is part of why we're seeing such an influx.
Senator Langford pointed this out. Literally, the U.S. government and NGOs we're paying are facilitating the final miles of the human trafficking and sex trafficking chain. They're acting like the post office with Amazon. They'll provide the last mile for that package delivery. That's what we're doing. And by the way, we know we've been doing this for years now. And it's just gotten worse. Secretary Harris, you have any final thoughts?
First, I echo what Dr. Sadulski said. I want to thank you all for your attention, time, and commitment to this issue. It is a very important one. I have 3 words: secure the border. Right? I think that I think holding these officials accountable for doing their jobs, as well as making sure that they're just doing basic steps of vetting and being transparent with states and everyone, I think is really where the focus needs to be. I obviously think that we have created an environment where individuals in these countries know it's so easy that they're taking advantage. And that's why I say we have to secure our border. If we create anti-illegal immigration policies and practices, they will not come. Parents will not put their kids through these treacherous routes and hazardous conditions if they know they're going to be turned around. And if it were a legal system, it could be done safely. There's nothing humane about an open border, illegal immigration policy. There's nothing humane about that. It's Absolutely. Grotesquely inhumane. Ms. Rodas.
Thank you, Senator. I just would like to thank Senator Grassley and the whole committee for shining a light on what we now know is government-sponsored, taxpayer-funded child trafficking. And I hope that this hearing is going to help shine a light from this sacred place to the rest of the United States and the world that we will not stand for children being trafficked. So I thank you for your efforts to protect these vulnerable children. It's an honor to be here.
Well, again, thank you for your whistleblowing. It's courageous people like you that step forward under possible threat, okay? that allow the American public to actually see what's happening. So God bless you. Thank you, Ms. White.
I want to echo those sentiments. Thank you so much for hearing about this and for caring about the plight of the children. These are human beings. These are little children. This is not cargo that we're moving around the country. These are human beings with souls. And so I just want to say that, we've created our own perfect storm by allowing HHS to be accountable to HHS. So clearly that doesn't work. And so I would just say, because we can all agree it's not a political issue with regard to human decency, we need to take care of these children. So I would just ask that you go find them, save them, and change policies. Policy works, and we can secure the border. We've done it before. We can do it again. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, again, thank you for your whistleblowing. Again, we need more. I think we can do a pretty good job of protecting people, ensuring that we follow our laws, protecting whistleblowers. That's crucial, but we just need more people like Ms. Rodas and Ms. White and other witnesses too coming forward and describing this. People need to understand the reality. They need to understand the truth. Thank you all for coming. That concludes this roundtable.